On the very first episode of the Welcome Back podcast, I had my older brother Brian on the show. We spoke about addiction and his spiritual relationship with God, and I also shared my testimony as well. He shared a lot of stories about the craziest times of his addiction journey, which was 13 years long, and is something that he still struggles with to this day. Our hope is that anybody who listens to this podcast is going to get some value out of it. So whether you're somebody like me who is dealing with a loved one with addiction, or you're the person who is dealing with the addiction themselves, just know that if Brian can get out the other side, so can you. There is hope. And I hope that you get some value out of this podcast. Enjoy the show. So, welcome back to the podcast. This is the Welcome Back Podcast, episode 1. And I thought that it was fitting to do this episode with my brother, my older brother, Brian Brown. Brian, how you doing, man? You're just swaying in that chair like a little kid, bro. What are you
I'm doing good, man. I was definitely a little nervous. I don't really know why, but I was actually going to prepare for this, but I decided not to.
Well, how would you really prepare?
Praying maybe, but that's it. I mean, I prayed earlier about it, so
Yeah. Well, I didn't send you any questions. I didn't we didn't
episode
really
one.
we didn't really pregame how this was going to go down too much. I know that yesterday we talked a little bit, and I said, if we spoke about, we went down the storyline of addiction, you dealing with addiction. I've dealt with some addiction. I've dealt with your addiction, other friends and family's addiction, and then
Fair
all
game.
your spiritual journey. I feel like that would be probably a super valuable conversation. So I don't really know how to start that conversation, but maybe let's talk about where you're at now in life as far as addiction and spiritual journey, and just like whatever you're comfortable sharing.
Where I'm at now, right now in life is, my priorities, I believe, are set in the right order. I put God first. My family comes second. My ecosystem comes next. And, I have to put God first in my life. I've tried for many, many years to do it on my own and tried to fix myself on my own. And I would do good for a while, and then I'd fall, and then I'd do good for a while and I'd fall. And I mean, I've tried everything from drugs to sex, even to good things like a job or being around family members, and nothing ever really completed me. Nothing ever really helped fix that issue that I had today. Was broken heart, spiritually bankrupt. But today, I put Christ first in my life, and I just had a newborn, which is pretty wild. 42 years old and just had a newborn baby, Benson Mac Brown. I also have another son, Mason Patrick Brown, and and I have a beautiful wife, Kenya, who has stood by me. She's seen a little bit of my addiction. She wasn't really with me full blown in it. I was, um, just wandering in the wilderness, But today I have a good job. I have a good relationship with my family. I'm a part of a church. I got good people surrounding me. I got good men and other believers. I am part of AA. I actually do AA. But I'm also trying new things. I'm trying new things like affirmations and vision boards and, things like that. Just anything that can really just help me better my life, better myself, and to really just keep me on track, because I need a solid foundation. If I don't have a solid foundation, eventually it'll come crumbling down. So that's where I'm at now, man. I mean, I'm definitely blessed and feel good. Yeah, it's just kind of where I'm at.
How long have you been sober now? Like today? How many days has it been?
Okay, so it is 40 days. I quit smoking pot. I actually went, so let me backtrack a little bit. So last year, well, actually 2023 of November, me and my wife were pregnant with Benjamin, and we lost him at 19 weeks. So at the time when we lost him, she took it pretty bad. So did I, but I didn't really deal with it right away. I just tried to be, solid for her and just tried to be there to support her, and kind of shrugged it off, or thought I did anyway. And then probably about 6 to 8 months after that was when I started dealing with the grief. And I just kind of disconnected from people. I started isolating. I disconnected from meetings. I disconnected from my church. And ultimately, when you do that, you disconnect from God. So I just, I really didn't feel God's presence in my life. And like, I still prayed and I still went through the motions, and I, tried, but you really can't fake it. You know what I mean? Like, you have to walk it. And I kind of put God on the back burner and started to, do things of my own to try to fix myself. And I really didn't do anything to fix it. I just was maintaining, right? I overwhelmed myself with work. I worked, like 6 days a week, and that was my outlet for a while, but then it stopped working. And then started drinking here and there, and then that stopped working, and then I started smoking pot to help with the stress, and that stopped working. And eventually it led me back to the more hardcore drugs. I mean, I really didn't do it for long, but it was long enough to really affect me, as you know. And so, yeah, so 40 days, I am clean, off of everything. I just realized today that God has to be everything in my life, or it's nothing. And for a while there, I had 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and I was just deceiving myself. Definitely didn't last long. So that lasted about a year it took for me to really hit bottom. My bottom today looks way different from what my bottom used to be like years ago. Years ago, my bottom was jails. And it's so cliche because they say it, in these 12-step meetings, jails, institutions, or death. I mean, I was sure it was at the brink of death. I've been locked up many times. I've been in rehab many times. I mean, I was homeless for about a year, like homeless. Yeah, it was my bottoms back then looked a lot different than today. So today mine was, I didn't lose the job. I didn't lose the wife. I didn't lose my family. It was more of just losing my peace and my sanity was really what I lost this time. And that was probably scarier than all the other things.
You could have definitely lost it all, though,
Mhm.
right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, without a doubt.
So that's something that really intrigues me with addiction, and specifically your addiction. Being your brother, I've known you my entire life. Since the day I was born, I've known you. Um, and something that I've always struggled with understanding is how much you're willing to throw away. But like just in general too, just addicts in general, how much you're willing to throw away to feed the beast, right? To just keep doing the drugs or the gambling or the sex, whatever the addiction is, with almost total disregard for the sacrifice that is being made in order to keep that addiction going. So, what do you think that is? Like, what is that somebody who's dealing with addiction is able to completely disregard, if they have a marriage or kids or family that loves them, a good job, a stable life, and is willing to basically throw it all away to just like go one more day further into the addiction? What do you think that is?
Well, going along this journey of addiction, because that was a journey in itself. Um, when I first started using, it was a lot different. It was, I was young, I was experimenting, I was having fun. And, through the years of just having fun kind of turned into, really just maintaining, you know. Little did I know, every time that I was using, I was suppressing my emotion and my feeling. So I think as far as my emotional growth and my spiritual growth, it was stunted at a very early age. So I think that's a huge part of it. Um, that was in the beginning, and then it becomes maintaining, right? After that, every time that I would, go to jail or go to rehab, I would like legitimately look for answers, right? I mean, you know, I mean, dad was in the 12-step groups as well. You know what I mean? I mean, I had a lot of resentment towards them. I had a lot of resentment towards my father, because he was an alcoholic. And so I carried a lot of this burden, plus a lot of trauma that I went through as a kid, which, um, a lot of, mental and physical and emotional trauma. And I think, I really carried, that for a long time. And ultimately, subconsciously, I was trying to suppress that, right? I know today that what I was doing is I was filling this God-shaped hole in my heart with everything else but God. So, I would do these things that would only last so long. And then I would end up back right where I was again, using, right? Because that was like the thing that I did to try to, manage my, I mean, I don't even really know how you would say this, but I feel like that's really what I was doing. I was putting everything else in that hole, in that empty place, right? Because even though I was around people that loved me, I didn't feel loved. Even I had, had good things in my life, I still didn't feel loved. There was something internally missing, and I sought everywhere for it. I mean, as you know, when I went to jail the first time, I gave my life to Christ. That was back in 2011, I believe it was. Yeah, it was 2011. And then, 6 months later, I get out of jail, and life, really wasn't what I wanted. Some things happened, and ultimately I went back to the drinking and the drugging to suppress that emotion. And then I ended up back in jail. So then I went to the next thing. I started studying Islam and read the Quran, and I just kept going. And then after that, it would be like a snake chasing its tail, I would start with one thing and come full circle, and then something would hit me. I would have like this epiphany or this revelation that that's not what was going to fix me. And then I went to the next thing. I started reading books on Hinduism and Buddhism, and it just kept going. I started reading books on the mind, started reading books on psychic abilities, started reading books on mathematics and science. And I was trying to figure out what was wrong with me, couldn't fully understand. So I think personally, that's what that thing is. There is a demonic presence that takes over. That's like ultimately what I believe really is what's going on. When you start using drugs, you're inviting this kind of negativity. You're inviting this kind of negative, demonic spiritual presence in your life. I mean, it's like literally opening the front door to your house and just allowing anything to come in, right? So that's what I think that thing is. Sorry that answer was
It's a really long way to say the demons. It's the demons, man. The cross on your wall just flipped upside down.
Yeah, sorry, I apologize.
No, that's all right, man.
Edit this out.
No, we're keeping it in.
So yeah, I mean, that's I think today that would be my answer. That it is some kind of demonic oppression. I mean, it doesn't, obviously there's a physical effect to it. If you're doing something that is that you're physically dependent on, like I got hooked on pills, but when we got into our car accident, and then from there, it went from that to heroin, and I just kept going down the line with all the drugs, So I was physically dependent as well. And then mentally, it really messes you up, So I wasn't thinking right. I'm not, you know, I really don't have a sound mind when I'm using. I don't want to hear nothing from nobody, you know, and I'm just inviting all this negative stuff, you know, because I believe that you're a spiritual being in a physical body. And I believe if you start spiritually and you get grounded there, things tend to, you know, work itself out.
So, I mean, you could explain that now, and you can kind of see it now because before you were 40 days sober, you were sober for like 4 years. Right? Yeah, I mean, you were on a tear. You were on a really good run, right?
Yeah.
Went from having essentially zero relationship, at least not one that had any kind of grounding of trust in it, to really being able to rebuild our relationship over the course of that 4 years. I was the best man at your wedding. I gave a great heartfelt speech. You gave a great heartfelt speech. It was an amazing time when I think back to it. This was before Jonathan passed away. This, like he was there, like thinking back to actually your wedding day. And I'm like, I don't mean to like jump around a little bit in the timeline here, but I was thinking about this recently, how special it was to have you there, to be your best man, to give the speech I gave, to have Jonathan there. Even though he was still sick, he was mobile. He was, moving around a little bit. He wasn't dancing or nothing, but to share that moment with, the three of us plus the family and everybody else, is a really special memory of mine. But that 4 year sobriety run, you were able to rebuild a lot of relationships. And then you kind of fell off the wagon a little bit and you went on a tear in the opposite direction for a little bit there. Now you're 40 days sober. So congratulations on.
Thanks.
But you're able to identify that now, like kind of what that is for you, specifically being a lack of connection with God and with Christ. But think back to like when you're in the prime of addiction. And even in those times where it's like, I'm willing to bet it's like each day you wake up thinking like, I'm not using today. Like I said, I'm changing it all around today. And then by 9 a.m., it's like, where am I getting this meth from? Like how am I, what copper am I stealing? What antiques am I selling? Like what's going on here? Like if you could think back to like in the throes of addiction, do you have any kind of semblance of what the fuck is going on? Like what is this thing that keeps me moving further and further into this darkness? Is it even like apparent at all, or is it just like it's a one track mind? It's just I need to get hooked up and that's it.
Um, I mean, every time that I got in trouble and got locked up, I mean, I had clean time, right? Because I'm locked up. And every time that I was in jail, I would search for answers. So I feel like I would find pieces of truth along the way. So even though I'd get out of jail and I would repeat the same thing while I was using, I still had those pieces of truth. So I think like ultimately, even while I was getting high, I was still searching for answers. But there's one point that, I really remember, and that's when I was homeless. Like, you would hear, people say things about you and people look at you different and there's no hope for you and this and that. And so I believed it. Like I believed the lies and I was like, this is who I am and this is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. And that's what I did. You know what I mean? So it wasn't like, believe me, there was days where I woke up and I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. But that's a very short thought. It's in, it's out, and it's how can I get more? Yeah, especially when you're physically dependent on something because
Yeah,
you're physically sick.
every morning I wake up and I go, I'm not eating cookies. And then by like 10 a.m., I've eaten 4 chocolate chip cookies. Don't tell George. George would be very upset with me. But it's a similar thing. So like the
Yeah.
sugar addiction is an addiction, right? So it's obviously on a different scale, and doesn't have like the immediate consequences of destroying your everything in your life. Oh, on a long term, it could, but it's a slower process in most cases. And I don't mean to minimize, the addiction, especially the level of addiction that you dealt with and you deal with. But it is a similar thing. And look, I'm no angel for anybody who might see this. I'm no angel either. I've only been sober from smoking weed for a little over a year. In November was a year.
Yeah,
So
that's impressive.
it
Like,
is
I'm
very,
impressed.
it is very impressive because we smoked since we were 14, 15 years old,
Yeah,
essentially,
13 years old.
essentially every single day. There's only two times where I went any kind of period, like mentionable period without smoking. It was when I got kicked out of high school. I didn't even really stop for that long. As you remember, I can actually tell this story. It's a funny story. I got kicked out of high school for having weed. And actually, I happened to have some pills on me too, which I didn't even know what the pills were. Somebody gave them to me that morning. And then somebody saw me in the class, a girl who I never talked to a day in my life. She must have not liked my face or something like that. She ratted me out. I
She
got,
just didn't like the weed, bro.
I don't know. I don't know. She saw me pass the pills off to this kid. And, and in all reality, I was going to sell the weed and I was going to sell the pills at some point, but I had like 4 grams of weed on me. And whatever, that led to me getting busted, getting expelled. They made a spectacle out of me. And what was the point of telling this story? Oh yeah, and so
I
then
don't
I
know.
went on 6 months probation, and I got expelled from high school, right? And in that 6 months probation, I was supposed to stop smoking, and I did for a little bit, but we were framing houses back then, so I just kind of kept smoking, and then like I didn't get drug tested for like 4 months. And then we moved into John's old
Old
house
house.
in
Yeah.
Pocono
Pine
Farms
tree.
at Pine Tree, me, you, and Rebecca. And and my probation officer knew that I had moved out of mom's house. And because of the move, even though everything was copacetic up until that point, she was like, I'm going to give you a drug test. So I'm like, oh shit. I was up the night before until like 3 in the morning.
I actually think I remember this.
Yeah, we had a house party.
Drinking what?
Yeah, we had 80 people in the house. We had a house party, a banger. And I was up all night drinking and smoking and all sorts of shit. And then I remember just chugging like a gallon of water from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. And I pissed water and I passed the test. And I shouldn't have. But that was like, somehow.
God.
So,
It was a
got
God
away.
moment.
That was a God moment. I've had a few of those moments where he let some shit slip for me. And so it's funny. So like that, I guess, was going to be one memorable time where I stopped smoking for a length of time, but not really. And then when Christy was pregnant with Michael, I stopped for 10 months. And that was like the longest time since I was like 14 or 15 years old. So this run, and there's been maybe one or two times in between in kind of recent history where I stopped for 5 months. I was like, you know what? I've been so good. Let me smoke a little bit. I just smoke once on a Friday. And then all of a sudden I buy an ounce of weed and I'm smoking every day for a month. And then another time I went 6 months and then I did the same thing. Like, oh, I've been good. We were out on family vacation. And I'm like, I'll just smoke a little bit. And then when I got home, I bought an ounce of weed and I smoked for 3 months straight. So it's just like, I kind of feel what it is. So me being sober now over a year, I still think about it a little bit, you know, especially if I'm like hanging around the house, nobody's home. I'm like, man, it'd be nice to just smoke a little bit. But I know that if I smoke a little bit, that's it. I'm back
Yeah.
in, baby. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Yeah.
so like for you too, right? It's like it's got to be an all or nothing thing. And I want to say on a very rare occasion, there's an addict out there who can be addicted to, like, let's say, drinking, but then be able to smoke weed or do something else, or be addicted to heroin or meth and be able to drink and then not lead into a full blown tear. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if that really exists too much. So it's like for you, if you do a little bit, you're doing it all.
Well, I mean, ultimately, it may not get me right away, but over time, it will. So it took about a year. It took about a year really to bring me to my knees, brought me back to my drug of choice. And ultimately, look, man, I like the way drugs make me feel. I mean, that's just the reality of it.
Yeah, they're
And
good.
there's no shame in that. You know what I mean?
They're
I
good.
mean, I've experienced a lot of things being high. I mean, I've had spiritual experiences, and I'm not talking about like this positive thing where the presence of God, like that's not what I'm talking about. But I've had out of body experiences. I mean, I've had these experiences getting high, and I always want to get to the next level and the next level and the next level. So for me, it's going from, 0 to 100. ultimately, this is a great saying. It's like, I say that I use drugs, but drugs use me, and it happens every time. So obviously, today it's just really coming to that understanding, the acceptance, and just knowing that for me, it's either, God is everything in my life or he's nothing. And for somebody like me, I need to be sober. That's when I'm my best, when I am sober. I cannot smoke pot, cannot do, drink alcohol. I mean, even other things like vaping, like I'm quitting that too this week. Like I'm really giving it my first official, and this is kind of crazy because, people can look at this and be like, oh, well, like he's Christian and he shouldn't be doing this and he shouldn't be doing that. It's a process of sanctification. I mean, this is a process that I've been going on for a while, and you knew me right in the thick of my stuff to the person that I am today. It's like night and day. It's completely different. You know what I mean? The way that I think, the way that I speak, the way that I, act around people. I mean, everything has changed. But, it took a while, man. I mean, because you get addicted to the lifestyle. I mean, like I said before, I liked getting high. I liked the way it made me feel. I also liked the way that it didn't make me feel, right? When I was dealing with stuff and just shoving my emotion down, just doing self-maintenance, But there's no better feeling than being sound-minded, spiritually fit, physically fit, present, you know. Uh, I mean, honestly, holding Vincent in my hand this time, that was like a big wake up call. I mean, I'm holding this newborn in my hand. I'm 42 years old. Like, if I keep going down that road, I'm going to lose him and I'm going to lose everything. I'm going to lose my other son. I'm going to lose my wife. I'm going to lose I'm just going to lose everything. And, I repented and I turned back to God, and I'm going to tell you what, it was like, I didn't even skip a beat. I'm like back to where I was before, and it feels great. And there's nothing that compares to it, and I still get thoughts. I just don't entertain them, or I talk to somebody about it, or I pray about it, and I just keep it pushing, man.
Yeah. Well, and I don't want to get into his story too much because he's not here and kind of without his permission of getting into too much detail. But, our father, he is an alcoholic. He's been sober 35 years, but to this day, he still thinks about drinking. And it's not how it was when he first got sober, of course, but it's something that he has to manage on a day-to-day basis because he has that demon that is constantly at the door, just waiting for him to crack it
Don't
open.
push up.
That's it, just waiting. So I know you, Mike. I know eventually that door's opening up. And the problem is, and I just talked to him about this recently, he was just like, and I know, like, he was like, I thought when I retired, maybe I'd smoke a little pot or something like that. And this was when I was still smoking. So I was kind of like egging him on. I'm like, yo, Dad will smoke a little bit, because whatever. And
Influence.
and it would have been a fucking disaster if that would have happened. And I know now,
Yeah.
that can't happen.
It's kind of crazy because I don't really remember Dad being drunk all the time, right? Because I was pretty young. So I don't really remember him being like a full blown alcoholic because I was so young. So the way that I know my father is being a sober man.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I first, like he would tell me all the time, like, Brian, you're an alcoholic and you're an addict. And I didn't want to hear nothing, you know what I mean? But, looking back now, like I had all these resentment towards him because, one, is this why I'm an alcoholic or an addict? Is it because I have his genes? I don't know, but I had a resentment towards him for that. I had a resentment towards the rooms because now I'm a part of that, right? So I didn't even want to go near it. But after, coming to this realization, like my father was a good man. He did what he needed to do. Like, even though our family kind of got broken up and, we had to visit him on the weekends and we weren't always super close and we didn't talk about everything and he wasn't there to show me how to shave, like, just like little things like that. But if I would just, say today what kind of man that my father is, he had to make those tough decisions to do what was right for him. But ultimately, that was what was right for us as well. Because otherwise, we wouldn't even have I mean, he probably wouldn't even be here today. He'd probably be dead.
Yeah, he'd probably
So,
be. Yep.
So, I mean, I'm super grateful for, for him taking the route that he did. And then not only that, it really makes me look at him and it makes me look at his life. So, I mean, I pull inspiration from wherever I can get it. I mean, even you quitting pot. I mean, that's a big inspiration, man. I mean, because like you said, we smoked pots at the age of 13, you know? The only reason why that I had any kind of sobriety was mostly because I was locked up, and it was forced upon me. So it's not like,
Yeah, and I was living I was living in a false reality with my pot smoking, because when I was in the pharmaceutical industry for 13 years, if you know me, you've heard this story 1,000 times. I'm not going to go back into it. I'm still a little upset about it. All right. But I was making good money. I had benefits. Dude, I would go to work high every day. I mean, there were times where my routine was I'd get up when Michael was around, I'd bring him to daycare or drop him off at school. Then I'm home. Christy's working. You know what I'm saying? I'm home by myself. So I would work out, I would eat breakfast, and I would smoke some weed. I would usually smoke weed before I worked out, and then I'd smoke a little bit after. And I love smoking blunts. That's my freaking jam. I blame Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg for that. But and then I would go to work high as a fucking kite. There were a few times, more than a few times, let's say, where I would be driving to work and I would be like pulling up to the gate, and I would get a realization that I am too high. I'm way too high to be here. Like, what the hell? And then I would start panicking. You know what I'm saying? Because like you got to go through security, you got to go through the gate, and then I was
oh,
always
they
in.
could smell you.
Oh, they
I'm
smell.
sure they'd
Yeah,
be like, oh, here comes Mike. Hi again.
I would always wear sunglasses, but it's like they know.
You ain't
You know.
fool nobody.
But I didn't smoke in the car, nothing like that, so I didn't smell like it. But I stopped smoking in a car a long time ago. I just got too scared of getting pulled over. But it would be very obvious, because the telltale sign to somebody who's high at work is they're just looking at everybody's shoes. Like, they don't want to make eye contact with anybody, so they're just looking down the whole time. And I was always in a position where I was giving like shift change meetings to the whole group. So I got 20 to 30 team members there. I got my managers, 2, 3 managers there, deputy directors, all the way up to senior directors, where I would have to give presentations and meetings to, like, impromptu. Like, I remember one day I showed up, one of these days where I pulled up to the gate and I was like, I am so fucking high. I almost would just like turn around at the gate and go home and call out sick. I'd say I shit my pants or something. And I would be like,
Oh,
whatever, man,
jeez.
just go in. You're good. Yeah, it's a good one. Who's gonna deny me?
No, they'll just feel bad for you.
Yeah, I'd roll in, and then my manager would be like, "Hey, Big Bob wants you to give that share. Big Bob wants you to share that information, that presentation that you put together." Like, when? Like Thursday? No, 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 today. Like right now. Like, oh shit, I'm too high for that. And this is like the senior director of the flu manufacturing facility. You know what I'm
He's
saying?
the
Like,
big dog.
he's one of the big dogs, and he answers only to the site leader. So he's one of the big dogs. And I'd go in there and I would just fucking it'd be like a comedy routine. I'd be up there like just cracking jokes on people in the room. I'd be rhyming without like really realizing it. I give all the information. And I have to imagine that some of the people in that room knew I was high, but I was just
Oh,
so
yeah.
good at what I did. They were just like, whatever. This dude's
Yeah, it's my, yeah. Killing it.
he's up there killing it, man. He's ragging on Bob. He's ragging.
Look at him. He's rhyming.
Yeah, he's rhyming. Everybody's laughing. They're like holding their stomach. This hurts so much because they're laughing. But I was living in this false reality with smoking weed, because I was making money. I was getting paid. Had everything was good. Bills were paid. Got a truck, whatever.
But that's also your ego, man. I mean, that's what the ego does. You know what I mean? Like the ego plays on you. Like, look, I got this, and like you can maintain it, sure. But yeah, I can't maintain for very long. You
Well,
did
the reason why I stopped was when I got fired from that job and I started running my own business. I realized that I'm not gonna do the hard thing, like the uncomfortable shit that I have to do to make a successful business, which is essentially sales, talking to people, calling them, letting them know I exist, letting them know about the business, trying to sell them on the service. That's never going to happen if I'm high. And I was smoking every morning. So it was like, first thing I do is get everybody out of the house, and then I start smoking. It's like, when do you have time to take care of the business shit? I mean, you can
Yeah,
be high.
but not only that, bro, you can just go to work high as a kite, and there's things that you don't ever have to worry about when it comes to that business. You just came in, did your job, and just went home. It's different when it's different when you're running a business. You got to take care of all of it. So you don't got that flexibility anymore to do that.
Yeah. And I don't want to say everybody that I worked with there was smoking weed. 90% of the people there, all the way up to leadership level, I knew a lot of people there that were smoking weed. These are the people making your vaccines, people. They're high. These people are high. They're on drugs.
Be careful. Be careful.
Careful. Disclaimer. It's not on the little insert, the paper. But yeah, you're right. You're in the routine, right? So I was comfortable in my routine. I knew that every day I was going to be doing the same exact thing. The only time it'd be different is if a machine broke down or somebody called out or, whatever, but it was essentially still the same thing. So it's like, once you're in that routine, you know what you got to do. You could do that shit high all day. This new thing of running a business, and it has to work. I mean, if this income worked, what was I going to do? That I was going to tuck my tail in between my legs and admit failure? Like,
I mean, it's kind of crazy because before I started, drinking and smoking pot again, I was really good at my job. You know what I mean? Being a project manager and stuff with the guys that I work with, which are great. Like, I love them. They've been they're more like family than anything. They've been so supportive through all this. And, they didn't fire me, and, like, I still got my job, but they've been there for me. But I remember I was doing so well, and I was able to multitask. I was able to run 6, 7, 8 jobs at once and just be super reliable. And the minute I started using was the minute it started like falling apart. And it's, like, after a while, I just didn't even care. You know what I mean? Like, everybody knows what's going on. It's like my way of not really asking for help, but just not really caring. But yeah, dude, when I use and I got to do my job, not good. What are you drinking? Energy drink?
Energy drink.
Oh, man, they're horrible for me.
But it's First Form. I love supporting them, so I'll drink the First Form energy drink. It's not a sponsorship. They're not sponsoring this podcast. They don't even know about it. It doesn't exist yet. Until this episode comes out, it doesn't really exist. So kind of like keeping on that theme of the discussion, thinking back to some of the crazy shit that you got involved in, whatever you actually feel comfortable sharing, or I'll kind of prime a story, and then you tell me what actually fucking happened.
Oh, wait, so you don't know what happened?
No, well, I know what you told me happened, but I don't know if that was actually what happened, I remember one time, I think you were living with Mom, maybe with Jerry too, I don't know. And she said that, I don't know, Brian, I remember she called me. She goes, I don't know what happened. Brian came home. He had a bag. He's like burying a bag in the backyard or some shit like that. He had like his clothes in a bag, and they're covered in blood. And she's like, I don't know if he killed somebody or whatever. I'm like, at that point, I mean, this was in the fucking thick of it.
At what house?
Might have been Devil's Hole Road, maybe. But she said that.
To be honest with you, he might have been high. Because I don't remember.
Well, she definitely was high, that's for sure. But she wasn't high on meth. I know that. She might have smoked.
Wasn't doing meth then.
She smoked a little tweed. But she said you came home and she didn't know where you were at. And then you showed up and you had a bag of clothes. I don't know if you buried them or you just whatever. You like hid them. She went and sought them out, and your clothes were covered in blood. And what this was, and I'll remind you kind of what it was, because I can see you're absolutely fucking lost.
The past is the past. I don't remember a lot.
You told me, or from what I understand anyway, that you broke into a house, which actually I think was the house next to the one we lived in, Pine Tree.
That actually might be accurate.
Yeah, you broke it. This is when you lost your front teeth. So you broke into the house.
Yes.
So this is the other thing. Yeah, so you can leave your teeth in. So
they don't come out.
Oh, good. that was the other thing. She goes, and he has no teeth. And I'm like, wait, what? I'm like, what? What are you talking about? She's like, I don't know if he got into a fight, somebody knocked his teeth out, whatever. But I think upon further questioning, you had admitted, like, yeah, I may have broken into a house. I don't know what the statute of limitations is on this shit, but I may have broken into a house and
I think I'm good. I think I'm good.
What?
I already pled out to all that.
Okay.
Yeah, so I broke into a house, but I was trying to get in through. All right, so look, listen, okay, this is getting really real. This is like me just exposing everything. When I'm in my addiction, all bets are off. I mean, like literally, that's just where my mind goes. That's who I become. It is literally like something else takes over. I'm not who I am today. So this is all stuff that happened in the past. I don't break into houses anymore. I live an honest life. All right.
Christian man, folks.
Feeding, it's real Christian. But I mean, look, this is what God does. You know what I mean? Like he brought me from that to where I am today. So if I can do all these crazy things, you know what I mean? And where I'm at today, people have hope.
Well, and that's kind of why I want to share some of these stories, because there are people who are, I mean, they're in it and they think it's hopeless. There's nothing else can be done about it. And yeah, like what you just said, I'll just repeat it. If Brian could go from where he was, 13 years of hardcore fucking drug addiction and all sorts of crazy shit, to where he's at now, not perfect, but you know,
I mean,
by no means, we never are, but in a place where you are a good fucking person. You turned your life around, just bottom line, that it is possible. So that's what I want. That's what I hope that some people will take away from our conversation. So go ahead. Tell me about this.
Story.
Yeah.
All right. So basically, you know, it really just came down to feeding my addiction. Any kind of crime that I did, I didn't do like, you know, armed robberies. Like I wasn't into stuff like that. So I was a criminal with a conscience, if that's even possible. But I broke into a house to steal stuff so I could support my habit. This particular house, I had a crowbar. I was at the front door, and I'm like prying on it. Like you know, you kind of feel that it's kind of opening. And so the last time that I pulled back on it, the door popped open. I didn't realize that it popped. And this is honestly the truth. I knocked my own teeth out. Like basically, I was kicking in front doors, and God kicked in my front doors. That's what I take away from it. He said, "You want to kick in front doors?" So I pull back, and I go to throw my shoulder into the door flies open because I put all my weight into it. Like I ran into this door, the door whips open, and the post to the staircase, my face went right off it. Bang. And I had a mask on at the time. So everything was contained. I didn't leave any blood evidence behind or anything.
Oh, you didn't? Okay.
But this is how crazy I am.
DNA everywhere.
I hit it so hard, it knocked me on the floor, and it like knocked me for a loop to where it took me a couple of seconds to like come to, and got up, robbed the house with my broken teeth and blood in my mouth, loaded up the vehicle, took off. I mean, that's what happened.
Holy shit.
And then pulled my mask off and spit blood everywhere inside the car.
What kind of mask are we talking about?
It was just, you know, a lot of the masks you see today, people wearing. The ones where it just covers the eyes. Yeah. With just my eyes exposed. But yeah.
Like the old
school
mask, like an old school bank robber?
Yeah, yeah. So that's how my teeth got knocked out of my mouth. Like I said, I was kicking in front doors, and God kicked in my front doors. He allowed that.
I mean, it's horrible, but that is pretty comical that you're not embarrassed. And I remember after that, like seeing you, because obviously after one of these things would happen, you know, everybody would show up and try to talk sense into you. And I remember looking at you, and you were like, "Look at my fucking," and your lip was all fucked up, and like, I'm like, "Oh well, you look like a drug addict now." I think that's what I said to you. I'm like, you're playing the part now. I'm like, ain't no hiding who the fuck you are now.
Incredible. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I almost forgot about that. Thanks for bringing it up.
I'm gonna bring some more up that I like. I kind of know about, but I don't really know what happened. So that's
I mean, that's literally where my addiction took me. I mean, I would do crazy things like that.
Was there?
And it's crazy because getting my teeth knocked out of my face, that didn't stop me from getting high or going to get help. I continued on doing what I was doing. And I actually think after that was the high speed chase with the cops. I mean, this is how.
I was getting to. I wasn't going to go there right away, but we might as well go there. Let's do one before that, and then I think that is like the
Okay,
ultimate.
and then I think we're good.
And then we're good with this. But this is interesting because I want people to understand how bad it can get. And then again, the only reason why I want to kind of share these stories is one, to find out like from you now being sober and who you are today, like what actually happened there. Cause I only know like what I could piece together and maybe what you told me when you were sober.
Listen, if I can't laugh about it today, man, like I mean, some of it was comical because this is like, I was retarded. You know what I mean? I mean, like some of the stuff that I did is mind blowing to me today. It's just like, that's how far it took me, you know? But like I said, I was playing the part. I was going to be the best at it. But yet I got caught every time.
And that's the thing I will say about you. I kind of have a lot of resentment towards you my entire life because you've always been so much better at everything than I have been, you know, like sports and girls, and you were always very handsome and I was always just like a dork. And I really kind of hated you for it my entire
You're
life.
handsome, man. What you talking about?
Now I grew into my looks, you know, many years later. But you know, if you were going to be an addict, you were going to be the best damn addict anybody ever saw, and you're pretty good. You're a top five alive. So, was there a time that you? Was there a time that you?
Well,
broke?
I mean, listen, like really, where did it really take off? I mean, we can go back to that, but it was the car accident.
It was the car accident.
That's really where my addiction really took its course.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and just to kind of put it in context so people know. So, Thanksgiving Eve,
November 26th, 2004.
Was it Thanksgiving night? It was Thanksgiving.
It was Thanksgiving night.
Yeah.
November 26th, 2004.
2004. It was me, you, it was Moses, it was Cheesy. Our friends, nobody has a normal fucking name.
Except for me and you.
Brian and Mike, and then Moses and Cheesy. Okay. So, but even then, everybody was calling me Doc. So nobody even fucking had a real name. And you were Broder, or Bros is Froze. So, so we were working at a bar, the Hoop in Stroudsburg. The Lucaland. I just call it the Hoop because that's
the Hoop. Yeah, it's what it was.
Yeah. And we went there. We played a little pool. We had like a couple drinks. We legitimately did not get drunk. I think we had 2 beers, and then we might have had a shot or 2.
That was it. It's for like, I think it was like 3 hours, 4 hours we were there. So look, kids, ladies and gentlemen, buzz driving is drunk driving.
You've seen
that's very true.
They're true. Yeah. Buzz driving is drunk driving, and don't do it. This is not it's not a contest, all right, to see how drunk you can go driving. It is amazing that neither of us are dead, especially because of this night.
None of us.
Many nights beyond that. There's been a lot of situations, driving around high, drunk, all sorts of shit. And we do have friends that did not make it out of those situations. We are very, very lucky. And a friend of mine, I won't get off track, but yeah, I was talking to somebody about this recently, and they were like, yeah, I can't imagine if my kids grow up and do the same shit. I'll fucking have a heart attack. But anyway, we were there for like several hours, so not getting hammered, whatever. And then we were gonna go up to a girl's house, and
I was being the responsible one, right? I was like, I'll pace myself. You know, we all went out. I was actually supposed to go snowboarding for the first time upstate New York with Bill. We won't get into that.
Yeah,
with Bill.
With some stuff.
He's not in a good place right now.
No, he's not. I'm praying for him. I know I'm laughing and shit, but I don't mean to laugh. I like Bill. He's a good guy.
To be honest with you, didn't even recognize him. I didn't even recognize him. No, doesn't look like. He looks like crap.
He aged. Yeah. That drugs will do that to you. And drinking. But yeah, so anyway, we leave the bar and we're going up to Pocono Farms East, basically right where we used to live too, like at a different point, but used to live up there. And we get cut off by a car full of kids. They're hanging out the window,
Threw
giving
a
us the
bottle at the car
for what, and literally for no reason.
for no reason.
We were driving normal. There was plenty of traffic there. It wasn't like we were the only ones on the road. And I remember looking. I was in shock, and I remember looking at you and going, "I wonder what they want." And you go, "Let's find out," because we were ready to fucking fight. We were ready to throw down with these kids. So we take off after them, and we're in that Mazda 3.
We're going back and forth. So then it really just turned into a race.
Yep.
Just back and forth. I'd cut him off. He'd cut me off. I'd cut him off.
We're trying to get them to pull over so we could fuck them up and get into a fight with them or whatever. They would not pull over. Long story short, our turn is coming up. It's just like a little split off. And I remember saying, this is the last thing I remember saying. I go, we're going to miss our turn. Now, I didn't say it to go like, yo, try to make the turn. But I said it like, let's just, whatever. Let's just fucking be done with this shit and let's kind of go. And whatever happened there, we hit the little median.
Yeah. So what happened is he went onto the shoulder and kind of bumped me over. So he made the turn. And when I went to go turn, I missed the turn.
We were doing
at 110. It was 110 miles an hour.
110. Holy shit. And
hit the median.
Hit that little median. It's just a curb, like a little curb.
Jumped over the road. Launched us in the air, 9 feet into the air, and hit the tree, 9 feet in the air.
Lots of trees. And I remember coming to and going, that was a fucked up dream. But I can't, it's pitch black. I can't see nothing. And then I hear Moses going, oh my, yo, what the fuck? And then I hear him, and then all of a sudden it's like, ooh, like it's coming back, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You see the movies and like
you hear all the glass settling, the friggin' dust from the airbags,
the trees, like the leaves, the branches that were breaking around us. And that
Easy got thrown from the car.
He got thrown from the car.
He got ejected.
Yep. So he broke a leg. I broke my arm. I broke my nose. Moses was sitting behind me. He broke his other arm. He thought his eyes were hanging out of his head. He pulled me. So the car landed on the driver's side. So on your side and where Cheesy was sitting, he got ejected, but it landed right next to him. He almost got crushed by the car. And then Moses, with a broken arm, pulls himself up on top of the car and pulls me out of the car, right? And he's going, my eyes in my face. He thought his eyes came out of his fucking head. He just had like glass in his eyes and shit. So I like get enough out of my face to go like, no, your eyes are good. Like I don't see eyeballs hanging out. That's all he was fucking worried about. And then I go, we got to get Brian out of the car. But my arm is a piece of fucking, it's like a string cheese, bro. It's just dang. My whole
arm. Yeah. I'm jacked up.
And then those kids came back. And I like vaguely remember this, but I remember Moses telling me he knew who they were. I knew who they were, but like kind of like not really knew them, just knew of at least the one kid. And that kid, like they saw what happened and then they took off. They disappeared. Then the ambulance showed up. And now I'm with one shoe, my favorite fucking sweatsuit, that red Echo sweatsuit I had. I love that fucking sweatsuit. That was my favorite fucking getup. I had the low top Jordans. Oh, I was fresh to death that night. Almost to death.
Almost.
Yeah. And the ambulance shows up. They heard the crash from the ambulance center and sent the one kid out. That kid had to go through like therapy. It was so dramatic for him. And whatever, they fucking pulled everybody out. They had to cut you out of the car because.
But I remember you reaching into the car and grabbing me. And that's when I came to. And I remember hearing all the glass settling. And it knocked me out of my seat, spun me around with my back in the center of the dashboard. My left leg was snapped in half behind the passenger seat. And I remember when I tried to get up, I could feel nothing from my waist down. And I had a real hard time breathing. And so I like was fighting kind of to stay alive. And I remember at one point during it, I just gave up. I said, okay, God, if you're real, I'm ready. And I gave up. But when the ambulance came, I remember I can hear them cutting me out of the car, but I can hear this voice. And this voice sounded so familiar. And it was the guy, Brian, that I went to high school with. And I'm going, I know that voice. And so that kind of like brought life back into me a little bit. And I was like, I'm just going to hang on to his voice. And I remember them cutting me out, talking, saying, he doesn't look good. We got to get this. They cut the roof off. They pull me out. They put me on a stretcher. And I remember all that. And then they snapped my leg. They put my leg back straight. And that's when I went out.
Yeah.
And then I remember waking up. My hair, perfect. Like I was getting ready to go. The best thing.
There. I mean, I was in, so it was funny. They flew me and Cheesy to one hospital. They flew you and Moses to a separate hospital.
St. Louis.
I mean, mom was going crazy, bro. Going back and forth to the hospital. Now, I wasn't in a hospital that long. I shattered my arm from my shoulder to my elbow. My nose was busted up. That's why it's so big. And and then I remember, so kind of funny story. I remember them. I was walking on the road, right, when the ambulance was coming, and they were like, this is before they started even cutting you out, really. And I was just like, you got to get my brother out. You got to get my brother out. And then I remember them. They were like, all right, we'll get on this stretcher. Stop walking around. Like, we got to get you to a helicopter and fly your ass out of here. So I remember them. They lay me on the stretcher and they start cutting my sweatshirt off. And I go, please, no. I'm like, don't cut my sweatshirt. I'm like, this is my favorite outfit, please. They're like, you are covered in blood. This is trash. This is no good now. And I'm like, please, do not cut my pants off. These are my favorite fucking pants. So they were like, okay. They just like appeased me. I'm like, look, my legs aren't broken. I'm like, you don't have to worry about that. I'm like moving my legs around and shit.
Isn't it crazy, like, how much you like value these things?
The stupid,
like, literally, we all almost just died, but you're worried about your blood-covered Echo suit. And I was fresh that night too, because I had like on $200 jeans, $300 shoe, like, just stupid.
Yeah, we were good. So they pulled my pants off. They didn't cut them off. They cut my boxers off. And I remember, this is the funniest fucking thing. So it's all girls too. It's all like girl, like EMTs or whatever. So they drive us over to the field where the helicopter's going to medevac me and Cheesy out. And I remember they pull me out of the ambulance and they're going to roll me over to the helicopter. And it's fucking Thanksgiving night. Dude, it was like 2 degrees out. You know what I'm saying? Plus I'm butt naked and I just have a sheet on me. So they get me close to the helicopter. Propellers are turning and the sheet goes flying. And I go, and dude, I go, girls, I'm like, it is very cold outside. I'm like, this is not the normal situation. And they're laughing. They're like,
I never knew that.
Yeah. It's the funniest thing. It was like, even in like the most horrible fucking time ever, I'm cracking jokes. I'm just like trying to keep it light. And also, I was not impressive that night. So it was just like the sheet goes flying. They're laughing and shit. And I got them cracking up. And then me and Cheesy are in the helicopter and I could look over and I see him and he's just fucked up. He's not having my shenanigans. And I'm like, Cheesy, I'm like, try to look out the window, man. We're in a helicopter. Like, this is a pretty good view. And he's like, Mike, just shut the fuck up. He's like, I am in so much pain. And then, whatever, we go to the hospital. So when I get out of the hospital, I remember they wouldn't really tell me what was going on with you because they didn't want me to like rip the tubes out of my arm and then go like try to hunt you down. So they're just like, he's fine, everything's fine, whatever. But they wouldn't tell me you were in ICU and like things were not really fine. And I was only in the hospital maybe 2 days, had surgery, got out. They wheel me over to where you're at. And I remember I get in that ICU. You got the tubes in your fucking throat. You're beep, beep, all the beeping and the fucking machines. And your hair is perfect, bro. It is perfect. And I go, your hair looks so good, dude. And you're just like, you can't talk. You're just like, I'm like, I don't know how that happened. I'm like, at least we know he didn't get any head trauma. His fucking hair is perfect. It looks untouched.
Yeah, I mean, dude, look, like looking back now, like, it was a miracle. Like, God had His hand on our lives that day, and the journey after that, and the recovery was rough, dude. Because once I crashed my car, I like lost all purpose. You know what I mean? I wasn't able to work. I wasn't able to provide anymore. I mean, me and Jen were engaged, going to get married. You know what I mean? I mean, these were like things that I was like, you know, that was my identity. And that's really where my addiction took off because they had me hopped up on everything. And I didn't know what OxyContin was. I didn't know what I was getting, and they were just feeding it to me. So I think I was in the hospital for like 4 months. And then, I had to learn how to walk again, my speech impediment. I had a bad speech impediment, like stuttering, that eventually went away. But it was a journey, man. That was rough.
Yeah, that
I
was
fought through it.
yeah. How much of that do you attribute not dying that night to the amount of steroids you were on?
I mean, he
You were on
said it
some steep-
probably saved my, yeah, I was on, so I listen, I'm not a big advocate of steroids, but back then when I was younger, I think did one cycle and it happened to be within that time.
Yeah.
So that definitely had something to do with helping me stay alive. There's no doubt about it. I mean,
Yeah,
even the doctor said it. It definitely helped.
yeah. It didn't hurt you.
But I think, I'd chalk it up to God. It was
Yeah.
definitely God had his hand
Yeah, it was like
in my life
99%
that day.
God, 1% D-ball.
So look, this is so this is the other thing too. I mean, I want to say is like when you go through like a life or death experience, it can do one or two things. It can either scare you straight, right? Or it could do quite the opposite to where you feel untouchable. And so, being young and stupid, that's kind of what I felt like. I've been through this traumatic thing where I almost had my life taken, but I didn't look at it and really learn from it. You know what I mean? I didn't like turn and like give my life to God and straighten my life out. No, it did quite the opposite. It actually fed my ego and was just like, yeah, look at this. Like you survived this, you can survive anything, right? I got metal inside both of my leg. And then, well, I got hit by a plow truck in 2017, walking on the side of a road, dope sick. I got hit by a plow truck. I mean, dude, like you can't make up the amount of stuff that has happened to me and in my life. It's crazy, man. Like I think back and just walking today, like there's like I have those moments where I go, like I'm grateful, man.
It's
Like I
amazing.
shouldn't be, yeah, I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be walking. You know, I mean, I've had pretty much almost like full recovery. Like obviously, I have like some issues. Like my whole body's kind of like tweaked, and half my calf muscle's gone on this leg, and I got rods and pins. So I have like pain and some nerve damage and stuff like that. But I mean, I'm 42 years old, and I'm doing pretty well.
Yeah, and you're pretty good shape too. But
Yeah.
but that doesn't come without effort, right?
Oh no, it took a lot of work.
Yeah, it took a
Took a
lot of
lot
work.
of work.
That one
Jail
calf
helped.
muscle, I will say, is a bitch ass calf muscle. It is embarrassing.
I have like a deer leg on my right side.
But
Got a
it's
baby calf.
it's just
Dude,
a
my
little
son's got bigger calves than me. And
he's a
he's what? And he's a month old.
he's a oh, your newborn son. I thought you
Oh,
were
wait,
talking
you're talking about Mason? Yeah, he's a beast.
about
Yeah,
Mason. Yeah, your
he's a
newborn
beast.
baby son has bigger calves than you. That's interesting. Um, and some and probably a bigger wiener, but that's just runs in the family. All right, I blame dad for that. Um,
The curse.
the curse of the Browns. Yeah, so
I
that's
mean, it
that
may
is
not be a curse. It really depends on how you look at things.
yeah
Perspective is everything.
yeah. If you squint, it's huge, huge. Turn the lights off. It's humongous. um,
I mean, listen, it's a great pickup line. You just you like you tell a girl, you're like, look, if you're looking for the most average night of your life, I'm the guy, right?
yeah,
I mean, it worked.
yeah. You won't be overwhelmed or underwhelmed. You will. The porridge is just right. We don't have to go down this road. We're both Christian men, I thought. Neither of our pastors would appreciate this conversation at this point. But no, it
No,
goes to
but this is real, man. You know what I
this.
mean? God uses people like us, believe it or not. People can say what they want, but they do. This is a process of sanctification. This is a lifelong journey.
Yeah. Nobody is Christ, right? You can never, you could strive to live as Christ did, but I don't think there's been a single man since him who's been able to get even anywhere close, right?
No, I mean, that's the whole point of like needing your reliance on God. Like, I mean, that's the whole point of it. Like, that's what makes you realize, you know what I mean? Like, I'm going to tell you what, if I didn't have God in my life today, if I did, so, I mean, I don't know if we want to kind of go back to like kind of how I ended up here, but I was got locked up and I was facing 3 to 6 years. And this was back in 2017. I got hit by a plow truck. I got locked up, then I got out, and I got locked back up, and I was facing 3 to 6 years. And I remember when I got locked up that time, I was done. I was tapped out. And I've been through a lot, you know what I mean? Through the car accidents and being locked up and the rehabs, just the stuff that I went through, put my family through, and just, a lot of guilt, a lot of shame. All that came tumbling down on me. And when I was in jail that last time, I was tapping out. I mean, for the first time in my life, was pretty committed on taking my life. Like, because when you first go in and you're like dope sick or whatever, they put you out in a day room, so you have no privacy. And that's the whole point of it. It's you're on suicide watch and they watch it and like you're detoxing. And I remember planning it out in my head. As soon as I get in my cell, this is what's going to happen. I'm done. And
How were you going to do it?
I hang myself. I mean, like,
damn.
I don't know. I'm not really sure if he was hung.
Well, he was strangled at least at the bare
Yeah,
minimum.
yeah. I don't think I'd be able to strangle myself. That's pretty beast.
I don't think he strangled himself. I think
No, I don't think so.
but they said he hung himself. But yeah, all right. So bed sheet off the post or something like that. Belt him.
Yeah.
Well,
So I mean, this was what I was planning, right? I mean, and like this was the first time that I was really contemplating like doing this. Like I was planning it and I was going through the motions. And then I remember there was this young kid who was bunking next to me at the time. And, we started talking here because I really didn't talk much. Like I was really depressed and just tapped out. And he starts telling me what a good guy. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like we're both sitting in jail. You're telling me what a great, no, you're a good dude, man. I can tell you're a good dude. And he was just, I'm like, dude, I don't even know you. I'm like, what? I'm like, you know nothing about me. And then, we started talking and like slowly we gained this friendship within like, a couple of days. Cause when you're in jail, you kind of want to, be able to team up with people and stuff, it gets lonely. And he like talked me out of it. And I told him, I was like, yeah, I'm checked out. This is what I'm going to do. You know what I mean? And maybe that was my way of, crying for help or whatever, or asking for help. And he kind of talked me to my senses, you know what I mean? And I was like, all right, you know what? We're going to bid. This is it. Like I accepted that I was locked up again, that I was facing 3 to 6 years, good chance I'm going upstate. And I was like, okay, we're going to bid. Right. And I started working out and stuff. But I remember after I came to my senses, one night when I was getting ready to go to bed, I just hit my knees, man. And I knew deep down that the only thing that was going to save me was God. And I was confused. I didn't know who he was. I had a problem with Christ. I learned all these, I studied all these different religions and I practiced them and I read all these books and I was just confused. I just didn't know who God was, but I knew that he existed because I was still here, and I cried out. And I remember probably about 3, 4, 5 months in, Mom came to visit me. She was the only one that would still come visit me. Nobody else would come visit me at the time, which is understandable. I burned all my bridges, but the love of mother, that's definitely doesn't compare to any kind of love.
Yeah. I was tapped at that point. I was like, nah, I'm done.
So I remember Mom coming to visit me. We're in the visiting room, we're talking. I'm starting to feel better. I'm working out now. I got weight on. I'm starting to look better. And I remember talking to Mom and she's like, yeah, you look great. And like, you sound great. Like, what's going on with you? And I told her, I said, I don't know. I don't really know what's going on. I said, but I'm starting to love myself for the first time in my life, but I don't know why or how. And, we finished our conversation. She wound up leaving. I go back to the block. And that night when I go, hop up in my bunk, I got to go to bed. And it just hit me, bro. It hit me. It was just like this revelation. And I go, this is God. God is, this has to be God working in my life. That time when I hit my knees and cried out to God, I was completely surrendering. I mean, I was done. You know what I mean? Like I was ready to take my own life. And I didn't realize that I actually surrendered in that moment, but I did. And God heard me. And when I was, got up in my bunk that night, it just all hit me. I said, this is God. God is working inside of me, right? Because I was never able to love myself before. So I knew that it wasn't me. Like it had to be something else. So my belief is that it was God. And I started having this faith. I don't know where that came from. And I would walk around the block and my God will provide. My God will provide. I had this faith and I fully knew in that moment that the only thing that was going to save me was God. And that's really where my journey went. And I remember at that time, I'm facing 3 to 6 years and I'm reaching out to help from wherever I can get it. And I remember this lovely young woman, mental health woman who would come in and speak to people. I actually put in a slip to speak to her. She came in and we started talking. And I remember her, she walked in and she puts this pamphlet down on the table. And it was a pamphlet to Pennsylvania Adult and Teen Challenge. And God spoke to me right there. And I said, that's where I'm going. And she goes, no. She's like, we don't know if you're going there. You've been in front of this judge probably 3 times before. You have a criminal background, like you have a prior, background. She's like, we're going to pray and hope that maybe they'll allow you to go to this thing. Because I should have been going upstate. Hands down, I should have not been able to have this program. But I told her, I said, no, this is where I'm going. God just told me that this is where I'm going. And I remember sentencing day, I'm in the back of the van, shackled with other guys, and I'm on my way there and I'm praying. I mean, dude, I had this faith. I still struggle with Jesus, right? I wasn't fully convinced that he was, the Son of God yet. But I believed in God, I believed in the Father. And so all of a sudden, as I'm praying, I could feel his presence in the back of that van. And it was overwhelming. And I remember being, going in there, and now we're all back in the bullpen and there's guys going out there and they're coming back in and they're getting sent to state. I mean, there's guys that had first offenses, for like, an 8-ball of Coke or something, and they were getting thrown upstate for a year plus. And then now it's my turn. So I go out there and I'm standing next to the public defender. And at this point, my faith is so strong that it didn't even really matter where they put me. I was just like, whatever I get, I know what I need to, find. I have to find out who God really is, because I know he's the one that's going to help me. He's the one that's going to change my life. I was fully committed to that. And I remember listening to the public defender, which this guy was known not to be a good lawyer. That day, I mean, this guy fought. So as he's talking to the judge, I like look up to him and I'm going, what's going on? Like, this guy sucks. Why is he fighting so hard for me? And then it clicked again, right? I'm like, because God's here. God is moving, And then they had mom come in. She spoke. That lovely woman came in, spoke on my behalf. The judge asked me if I wanted to say anything. And I said, sure, Your Honor. And I told him, I said, look, I never wanted to be a drug addict. I never wanted to be a career, criminal. This is not what I wanted for my life. I said, but I am certain, 100% sure that I know what I need to, and that's God. That's the only person who can help. So, Your Honor, you can put me wherever you want for as long as you want. I know what I'm in search for. I need God. And he said, Mr. Brown, that's all you want to say? Yes, that's all I want to say. And I remember just seeing him, and he's looking at the paperwork, and he's looking at me, and he pulls his glasses down, and he's looking at his paperwork, and looks at me, and all of a sudden he just goes, "Mr. Brown, I have no idea why I'm going to allow you to go to this. I have no idea. You should be going upstate for a very long time, but I'm going to give it to you. And I don't know why, but I'm going to give you this chance. And if you ever step foot back in my courtroom again, you will be going to jail for a very..." And I got the program. I was facing 3 to 6 years, and I got to go to a program for a year, which saved my life, changed my life completely. But I was like desperate for God. You know what I mean? So that was my journey, really, that really began walking with him. And I had so many experiences with him too. Him revealing to me that Jesus is his son and that he did die for us. I mean, it's been amazing, you know, but it's that's the only reason why I'm here today.
Yeah, I think I think most cases, and I just hearing your testimony and then knowing my own, it seems to me that this level of faith comes from somebody who is just, you know, in a dark place, have been run through the freaking ringer, and then is finally at a point where they can receive this message that's always been there, but for
Oh yeah.
whatever reason, societal reasons, self, uh, preconceived preconceived notions of what religion is and what God is and what Christianity is, who Christ was, stops you from ever really receiving the message. And in a lot of ways, I think it's one of the strongest ways to come to this point, because like I know people who are lifelong Christians or Catholics or whatever, and they don't seem to have the level of faith that I've witnessed in you. And I've even felt in myself at some points. I feel like I'm still very early on this journey, and recently I've been a little detached from it, and that's kind of my own doing. But like even my own testimony, like I lost my job, I was losing my marriage, I was losing all my relationships, I was depressed, I was full of anxiety. I I didn't
John
know what
passed away recently. That was a
John
big
passed
one.
away, Poppy passed away. Um, it just seemed like it was all lost. Like, and I didn't know what the hell I was going to do. And I didn't have a lot of support in my own household for the decision I was going to make, which was essentially leading me to get fired from this job. I was the only one making an income at that point. I had the benefits. We were living a pretty comfortable life, although we were living a life of comfort, but like even in our relationship, like my wife and I, it wasn't a good relationship. You know what I'm saying? We were just kind of going through the motions even at that point. But this just made everything 10 times worse, 100 times worse. She didn't really understand why I was making this decision. I just felt it in my heart that this is what I had to do. It just didn't make sense to me to comply with the policy, to get vaccinated and keep the job. I just felt like it wasn't the right thing for me to do. And therefore, I didn't do it. I lost my job over it and almost lost the marriage and everything else. In that time, this was right around when you were about to get married.
On
And actually,
fire, on
it was.
fire for God to. I was so solid in my faith. Nothing
Yeah.
can knock me off. Yeah.
Yeah. So think about this. This is February of what? 23 you got married? February
2022. Oh, no,
22. No, 23.
22.
23?
22.
22. You would know. I
22.
wouldn't. So February.
Actually, my anniversary is tomorrow,
Okay. Oh, yeah.
February 12th,
Yes.
2022.
Yeah. So no, this makes sense. I know I'm losing the job at the end of 21. They fire everybody in April of 22. I was on short-term disability because of the fucking anxiety and the depression, all this shit. They couldn't fire me right away. They had to wait until June, until like all the bureaucracy like ran out.
Mhm.
They stopped paying me in March, but they couldn't officially fire me until June. But leading up the end of 21, especially like December, January of the next year, I'm in the pits of despair. you get married in February, have somebody film it, but you asked me to edit your wedding film, which was a blessing to do.
I was actually watching that the other day.
It is amazing. It helped me get to the point where I was able to finally receive Christ in my life and in my heart, because I remember at that point I'm smoking more weed than I ever smoked in my life. I'm trying to numb myself. I'm seeing a therapist who's falling asleep in the sessions. I'm trying everything else other than look to God, because in our upbringing we never were raised with any kind of religion, or certainly not pushed one way or the other, right? So so I remember sitting here in this very room. You're sending me scriptures. John's sending me scriptures. I'm asking the both of you. I'm asking a lot of questions. I'm like, I'm starting to my heart is starting to open up a little bit. I'm getting curious. I seen John go through a lot of shit with his sickness, with his own marriage, and I saw him come out the other side of some of that. And I'm asking him how he did it, and it was his faith in God and Christ. I'm looking at you and where you were. I'm editing your wedding video. The music is just right. I'm watching it over and over because I got to edit like little pieces to it. My speech, your speech, the music, the visuals, everything. And I'm sitting in this very seat, staring at this very screen, crying like a baby. Just like, what is going on? Like, I'm feeling this. Like, what is this?
Like a faucet turns on.
Yeah, you're sending me scriptures. I'm upstairs doing the dishes in the morning, and I'm weeping, listening to the sermons. And I'm like, what is
yeah, I sent you Carter Collins sermons.
Carter Collins, bro. He did it.
Yeah.
He freaking helped do it. And I'm doing the dishes and I'm weeping. And then finally I go, I had asked John to bring me to church. He brought me to the church that I go to now up by me. It was him, Rebecca, her parents, maybe their kids or some of the kids. And
her mom's great, man.
Yeah. And it was good. It was like really good. This is all around that same time. And I'm starting to realize like I need to start exploring this avenue. I've never explored it. This may be what I've been missing. And over the next couple weeks, couple months, I start realizing like this is the thing that I need. This is what's going to help me pick my life up. And I reached out to you and I said, hey, I think I want to come to church with you. Is that cool? And I drive down there. I needed to record some audio from you, right? You did the voiceover.
We did the voiceover. Yeah.
Which was awesome. You did the voiceover for that Keep Fighting video, which is like basically a suicide awareness video. And I'm down there on the Saturday. We do that. And then Sunday I go to church with you. And you're up doing the AV stuff. So we're not even together. I'm sitting in the pews amongst strangers, just feeling super awkward, alone. And the music, they're playing the songs in the beginning. And I'm just like, right away, I'm like, what the fuck? I feel the knot in my throat. I'm like, oh,
start feeling it bubbling up, trying to hold it down.
Because the first time I went to church, I was like, oh, the music. I'm like, this is so corny. What the hell is this? Right? I didn't really get it. But sitting there that day in your church, I remember feeling it immediately. Like, oh, this is going to be hard to contain. Pastor John does the service that day. It's a good service. I don't remember none of it. It's a good service. I'm crying. I'm sitting in the pew crying with myself. People are passing me tissues and shit. Very nice people in that church. And I remember at the end of the service, he goes, for anybody who might need it, my wife and some of the church members are going to be here praying. If you want to come up, they'll help. They'll pray over you. They'll pray with you, whatever. So I knew in my mind, I'm like, I got to go up there. So I go to get up and go over to the side where his wife is. What's her name? Jennifer?
Jen. Yeah. They're great, man.
Incredible. And another guy there, Chris. I remember his name was Chris.
Yeah.
And
or Eric.
Probably Eric.
Eric.
Probably Eric. Sorry, Chris.
I mean, there is a Chris there, but I think it was Eric.
It might have been Eric. It
was the shorter guy with the silver hair. That's Eric. Yeah.
He has a son named Chris. I don't know. I'm making that up. So
he has a son named Jesse.
Okay. Sorry. I've been calling this guy Chris for 2 years. Okay. I'm like, and Chris.
The name doesn't matter.
The name isn't as important
It
as
was a guy.
the
The
reason.
guy.
So I go to get up and go over there, and this lady, this older woman, goes up, and it's very obvious she needs their prayer, and she's up there for quite a while, a long enough time where you are done doing the AV thing, and you come down and you go, "All right, man, you ready to get out of here?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "I guess, yeah, let's get out of here. Guess I'm not going to go do this face face
But
face."
then I start talking to somebody.
There's a older lady there. I don't know what
Love
her name, but she pulls you. Said, Ryan, what's her name?
Christina.
Christina. She
Lovely
said,
woman. Yeah, she helped me when I first came down here. She was super supportive, lovely woman.
yeah. So she
But
said,
I gave her a hug and I was talking to her and stuff. Yeah.
she goes, Brian, let me talk to you for a minute. So she pulls you to the side and you start chatting with her long enough for me to go, let me look. And I look down in the church because we're in the back of the church and like that kind of entranceway. And I look down and the lady who's up there is walking away. And I'm like, it's now or never, buddy.
Yeah. It's
Go.
now or never.
So I waste no time. I don't skip a beat. I don't think about it again. I just go straight down there. And I start to try to tell them what it is I'm need from them. And
I
I
need prayer for.
yeah, they're like, how can we help you? And so lovely and so nice. And I go, and I just break down. I start crying and I can't even get two freaking words out. I muster up enough freaking courage to tell them what the heck's going on. I say, I'm losing my job. I'm losing myself. I'm losing my marriage. I don't know what to do. And I don't know what to do. And they go, we got this. You know, they didn't say that, but I could see they were both like,
Let's pray.
we got it. So, Eric starts praying and he's praying over me. And Jen is just like confirming, right? Like each prayer, just like, yes, Jesus, please watch over. And I feel warmth hit the top of my head. And I remember in that moment, I flashback to like watching videos online of like people in church having like a Holy Ghost moment. And they're like rolling down the aisles and it's absolutely ridiculous. And I'm just like, these people are full of shit. And I go, oh no. I'm like, this is
I'm about to have one of those moments.
I'm about to have one of these Holy Ghost YouTube moments. And I'm like, don't fall on the ground. And my legs get so weak, my knees start shaking. And I'm like, oh shit, I'm about to fall on the ground. Like this is about to be embarrassing. And they're just praying over me. And I feel that warmth go from my head through my heart all the way to my toes. And I remember going, this is God. This is what that is. And I'd never felt it before in my entire life.
It's an undeniable feeling, man. Like you can't even really describe it because when you experience it, it's almost like a knowing. You know what I mean? It's almost like God, like, hello, I'm here. This is me. You know it. It's not like some conjured up thing that like you can do. Cause I've tried that before. It doesn't work that way. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah. And I was feeling it like leading up to that, doing the dishes, editing your wedding video, like the layers were peeling off.
Oh, yeah.
Right. The shield, the wall that had been built over at that point, 38 years of my life of denying, like, I believe in God, but never Christ or any kind of like religion. And now the cracks,
or any kind of relationship. Yeah.
Really. Yeah. Separate from the religion, the relationship with Christ. That's really what it's about. And which is what I loved about your church and what I love about my church is not about the religion. You don't get to Christ through the pastor. They make that very clear. It's
No,
like
you
your
don't.
relationship with Christ is between you and God, and that's it. You don't have to go through me. It's not like the Catholic Church that Dad grew up in.
This is the other thing. Like you can say as many prayers as you want. That ain't gonna get you into heaven. Like works aren't gonna get you into heaven. It's not based off of what you could do. It's based on receiving this gift of grace from God. You know what I mean? Like that, and it's only through Jesus do you get to the Father. You can't earn your way into heaven.
Yeah. And like, so my testimony is coming from the point of view of somebody who never had a relationship with God really in any meaningful way. And also I was kind of like, I wouldn't say I was looking for it. I'm certainly open to it at that point, but not a Bible thumper, not somebody who would force this onto anybody else. But I think sharing it is important because I always thought it was ridiculous until I felt God's love on my heart. And now, and that was the thing that picked me up out of that darkness. There was nothing else that was going to work. And I was able to turn my life around. And in many ways, you know, like the same way that you were able to turn your life around from a very, a point of great despair. I felt like all was lost. I didn't know
It's
what to
like it's just complete depravity. You know what I mean? It's complete brokenness and just hopeless.
Yeah.
You know what I
It,
mean? Just feeling like nothing's gonna get better.
yeah. It
You know
was
what? You know,
amazing to,
dude. You know what's pretty wild? Sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
no,
Finish what you're saying.
no, I'm just saying that, that day is when my outlook on things really changed. I mean, I could have very easily just kept thinking that it was never going to get better. Like you said, when you were in the throes of addiction, like, hey, everybody thinks I'm a piece of shit. I'm a piece of shit. This is who I am now. And there's nothing I could do about it. That's very much how I was feeling, to the point where, and I would not say that I was had suicidal thoughts at that point, but my friend Nigel had killed himself a few years earlier. And I was sitting in my truck thinking about Nigel and going, I understand why he did it. Like, I can sympathize why he took his own life, why he shot himself in the head with a beautiful young daughter. He's a good looking dude, like had everything that you would want, but he had this demon, he had this darkness that was on his heart and he couldn't shake it. And he took his own life. And I was sitting in my truck going, I understand. And that was scary enough for me to go like, and I wasn't going, I'm going to do the same thing. But I was like in a place where I was like, yeah, I get it. And that's one step away from, I could do that. And wasn't there yet. But if it would have gone long enough, maybe I would have been. And I wouldn't be sitting here today with you, you know? And that's
I
that.
mean, I definitely know the feeling. You know what I mean? It's complete depravity, complete brokenness, complete hopeless. Um, you know, just empty, man. It's like you're just a shell of yourself, you know, and people believe the lie that it would just be easier. It'll just be easier if I'm not here. It'll be easier for me, it'll be easier for everybody. But that's a lie. You know what I mean? That's just a lie that the enemy tells you.
I've
You
had a
know,
few friends kill themselves, and Nigel, that hurt because I was an adult and I was pretty close with him, and I didn't know him that long, and he was good. I mean, he had everything to live for, and whatever the hell it was that brought him to it, and I'll never know.
crazy how the enemy gets into the mind, right? When the enemy has your mind, the enemy got your grips, you know? And this is funny because even like this last time, you know, this past year, you know, just because you give your life to Christ and like I was sober for so long and I changed my life around that you think you're almost immune to things. You know what I mean? But that's not the case at all. Like this was a big learning lesson, right? Like the minute that I started unplugging from like the people around me and like started isolating was the minute that I got unplugged from God, you know? And then once I get unplugged from that, I'm just running off my own devices. So it's just like super important for me that I need to be, um, I have to be plugged in. I have to be walking with God on a daily basis. You know, like if I'm going to walk this journey out, I have to walk it with Him. Otherwise, anything can happen. You know, and it's really funny because I remember praying for you when I was in my room, living at a sober living home. And, you know, I'm on fire for God and I'm walking with Him every day. And He's the, you know, he's priority in my life because I know that He's the one that has saved me. He, he's the one that's going to take care of me. And I remember praying for you and I would pray for you all the time. And the one day I'm praying, I'm like, God, I really want my brother to come along. I really want, you know, want him to give his life to you and this and that. And as I'm praying, I just like heard it. I heard it in my spirit. And um he was like, yeah, he's coming. You don't gotta worry, he's coming. And it was funny because it was like right after I got married and then all that stuff happened. And then sure enough. And then I also kind of want to say that I actually had the opportunity to make an amends. with John, because I mean, that he, like for me anyway, he was my best friend. I didn't have a friend like him ever before. He was my best friend. And I remember, when I'm living in that sober living house in 2019, I was like, I think it's time to call him, make an amends. Actually, I think I was talking to you about
Hmm.
it.
Yeah.
And so I gave him a call and we got to talk about it. And he's like, Brian, man, I've been wanting to tell you, but I've also given my life to Christ back in 2012. And it's just crazy. Like, we picked up right where we left off. And then me and Kenya got to spend his last birthday with him. He called me up and he's like, hey, you want to come hang out for my birthday? And we went to go hang out on his uncle's boat. And then I think it was the week after that was when went to the hospital and he just never made it out. But it was like God gave me that little bit of time that I had with him. It's just really crazy how God works, you know?
Yeah, he all glory goes to God, but if it wasn't for you and for John, and even in some ways Moses, because Moses for a long time, I mean going back a very long time, he would always talk about God. I mean, if you listen to the music we were making, a lot of it was like pretty dark and, conspiratorial and stuff, but there were always glimmers of religion and God and scripture, especially from him. And it's funny because I was listening back to some stuff, like some of the last stuff I recorded, which basically was like 2014, and a couple years before that, the stuff that I was saying, and this was before any getting anywhere close to God, it was like, man, you would know it was coming. And I
Yeah,
didn't realize
yeah,
at the
yeah.
time, but I'm talking about all sorts of stuff about Jesus and like all this stuff, but not even really understanding it or knowing it is very, very interesting. But if it wasn't for you guys planting those seeds when you did, especially you and very especially John, um, because when you kind of disappeared in your addiction, John filled the role of my older brother. Me and him became so freaking close and so tight. He became my best friend, and he became my brother. He was always my brother, but when you were too lost to be there, he filled the role.
I was in
And
the wilderness, man.
you were literally in the wilderness. You were living in
Literally,
the woods,
camping out in the wilderness. Well,
homeless behind the Walmart or
it's
wherever
kind
the
of
hell.
crazy though, because looking back now, like I see where God was, because when you're in the darkness, you don't see it. You don't see the light. You know what I mean? Like I was just so lost, but looking back, God was right there the whole time. It was like I had the enemy pulling me this way and then God was pulling me this way. Like literally there, like I could feel this spiritual battle going on for my soul. Like that's what it felt like. Pretty wild though.
Pretty interesting, huh? How it works, and just kind of like where we're at now. It's a blessing, dude. It really is, and I'm struggling right now. Like if I'm being honest, business. It's the middle of February. I mean, you would think business is at a fucking dead stop for me. I haven't been able to get anything going. And I know it'll be fine. Everything will work out. And it's not that for a lack of trying, it's just whatever is happening right now. Things haven't lined up. So I'm struggling. And it's easy, like in these moments, I pray every night when I lay down, but I think I need to be more intentional with my relationship with Christ and surrendering, because when I was doing that better, it was like not that things got easier, but I was more at peace with what was happening. And yeah, I've been struggling recently, mainly this year so far, at the beginning of this year. So pray for me. You know what I'm saying? And I just need to make sure that I'm more intentional, I think, with my relationship.
Well, I mean, dude, I mean, you get complacent, you know what I mean? Like sometimes it happens, you know what I mean? I, I just realized that if my love for God isn't the first thing, isn't the most important thing. I mean, literally, it has to be him first. It's kind of like a weird concept that you'd put God first and then your family and then all this other stuff underneath that. Like God creates order for a reason, God loved me first so that I can love him. Right. But you get complacent, and sometimes, you just take the wheel and life starts, kind of distracting you, whether it's work, worry, sickness, the family, whatever. You start putting these other things before him. Like every morning when I wake up, I spend time with God. Is my walk by any means perfect? God? Absolutely not. I struggle with things on a daily basis, but I know that I'm going to get through it. And I know, like, look, man, if people knew me the way you knew me and to see my life today, you would never even know that I lived that kind of life. You'd be like, get out of here. There's no way you did almost 5 years in prison. You didn't bring the cops on ISP. You weren't a drug addict. You weren't homeless. You weren't this. You weren't that. I'm like, yeah, dude, I was bad. Like God has to be real, dude. I mean, he completely transformed me. You know what I mean? And it's still, like I still got this, still walking it out, still got this process of sanctification. The one thing that I will say is that I was reading the Bible the other day and Paul talks about how there is this inherent struggle with sin because we're born into it, right? And he basically says that he does the things that he does not want to do. But the things that he wants to do, he doesn't do, right? So it's a struggle to do the right thing. It's a struggle not to sin because we're inherently born with it. You know what I mean? I mean, this morning with our devotional that, I spoke on it, but it is a battle, right now, the times that we're living in. I mean, I'm not like a conspiracy theorist and this, and that, but I believe what the Bible says, and there's a lot of evil going, and we live in some pretty wild times, and there's a battle, and, like you got to pick a side, it's either you turn to God and you walk with him or you go the other direction. And we know that the other direction is just death,
And also it's like, yo, hedge your bets. Let's say what we're saying is true. There's a God. If you give yourself to Christ, you get into heaven, you live eternally by his side. Sounds great. Okay, so if you believe that, and then because you have those belief systems while you're here on earth, you live a good life. You treat people with respect. You do the right thing, even though it's the hard thing in most cases. There's really no downside to that other than maybe some social stigma that we've been led to believe is like the prominent point of view, which it's not. When I came to Christ, I started realizing how many people believe in Christ. I was like, oh my God, I didn't realize there were so many people around me, and I keep meeting them, and he keeps putting me in contact with more believers. But let's say you believe that and you give yourself to Christ and you walk this life, and in the end it's not true. All right, well, you didn't lose anything. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like,
you walked a pretty good life and you build character
exactly.
and you know what it's like to be a good man and to be a good husband. Yes, all that comes with it.
Hedge your bets. So at the very least,
I mean, but see, this is the thing though. For me, the experience that I had with Christ personally, with his presence and through dreams and things like that, overwhelming. I mean, life-changing experiences that I've had with him. I'm convinced. I'm 100% convinced. Do I have doubt occasionally? Do I have questions? Sure. I think we all do. There's some things that I just don't have answers to, you know what I mean? But that's okay. But I mean, that God-shaped hole that I had inside of me is filled today with his spirit. I mean, I feel whole again, and I can choose to walk away from it. I can choose to not, turn to God when things get, hard, or even when things get good. You know what I mean? Sometimes things get good and you're just like, hey, God, I'm good now. I'll take it from here.
yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And look at what, look where I ended up. I mean, this is, plus this is the other thing too. It's not really like the easiest walk. It's definitely the more challenging to walk with Christ and to walk an honest life and have integrity and to build character and value the things internally and not so much, money and, fame and this and that, and just all these worldly things, you know what I mean? Just, it really hards your heart when you put those things first. But yeah, super blessed today to be able to, do your first episode of your podcast.
I know it's just turned into a Bible study almost.
That's usually what it turns into.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's I think it's important to just be honest, and this conversation might turn people off. They might not like it, whatever. But there's going to be other people who take a lot away from it, and I think it'll give some people a lot of empowerment by us sharing our stories, right? So, talking about addiction, and then obviously that led into the spiritual conversation and the talk about Christ. And you shared your testimony, I shared mine. I think this is why I wanted you to be the first guest for the podcast. I've been talking about doing this for several years. We talked about like starting a YouTube channel, basically just like testimonies. Nothing ever really kind of got traction or took off, and mainly just out of not doing the work and taking the first step necessarily. But it was time. It was time. I said to myself like last month, I said, if it's going to be slow and I'm not going to be busy with like client work, all these other things that I said I was going to do, now's the time to start making action on that. And so that's what I'm doing. There's a whole bunch of stuff behind the scenes that I'm working on building out. And this was one of those things. So I knew that having you on first would set the tone. It would like kind of set the pace. And then also, frankly, if like there were like kinks in the system.
So basically, I'm just the test dummy.
You're the test dummy. Yeah. If this didn't work out,
I'm a pretty good test dummy though. I mean, I make it out alive.
You're pretty good. Yeah, you're resilient. But like if the lighting was screwed up or the audio was messed up or something like that, like I knew that you wouldn't judge me for it and we'd be able to just like figure that out. So it was like, all right, cool. Like Brian will understand. But I also know that you have a powerful story. And I am super grateful for the relationship that we have today, because we didn't have a relationship for approximately 13 years.
For a long time.
For a very long time. And I know we've talked about this before, but I am truly blessed to have you in my life and to have you who you are sitting here in front of me today, to be in my life as you are, imperfect, struggling, figuring things out, but trying to walk the right path, because it helps me so much to continue to figure out what my journey looks like. And just, you being my older brother, man, you've always been an inspiration to me. You've always been teaching me lessons. Sometimes it's because you're doing the wrong shit and I go, well, don't do that because I don't want to end up in prison.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's because you're doing the right thing. And I'm like, man, I really look up to that. I admire that about him. And you've always been that person for me, even when we haven't had the closest relationship. You've been guiding me, and you're a huge reason of, who I am today. So I appreciate you, man.
Look, the same thing goes for you, man. I mean, I know you're my younger brother and everything like that, but seeing you do what you do inspires me also. I mean, look, it came full circle, like I was there for you to help you kind of point you in the right direction with God, you know what I mean? And then when I, kind of slipped and fell, you were there for me. You know what I mean? And you wouldn't have been in the past. You know what I mean? So, I mean, God's, is doing a work in you. He's still doing a work in me. And, it's just been good, man. Life's good, man. And, honestly, for anybody that is struggling, going through this kind of stuff, there is hope. There is hope. I mean, maybe my story ain't the same and, we can't really compare, but, the addiction thing, that's a real thing, man. And, there are places get help, but ultimately, it's a higher power. For me, that's what it took. That's what it was. And um, just turn my life over to Christ. I mean, that emptiness is filled. Christ says, when you drink from my cup, you will never thirst again. There was this thirst that was inside of me that I was searching for and seeking for, and ultimately found it in Jesus. But yeah, man, thanks for this opportunity. It was cool to do this.
Yeah.
I'm glad
Yeah.
I was your test.
Yeah. You're my test dummy. Number one is in the bag. I think we should end it there. That's a good
Yeah.
place. Um, I yeah, I don't know, man. I just hope people. I hope that this thing that I'm doing, this experiment with this podcast, is conversations like this. Like, I don't want to have people on just to, like, people could promote whatever the hell they want, their business, their book, whatever it is. But I want to talk to people that I'm truly interested in talking to, who have a story to tell. That if at least one person sees that conversation, they could pull some value out of it. So whether it's struggles, like with addiction or faith or business, entrepreneurship, being a parent, being a sibling, whatever it is, like, I want to have conversations like we had. So this was awesome, man, and I appreciate it. Um, so yeah, and I'd love to have you back on at some point. If this is a thing and I have an opportunity to have you back on, then
I mean that would be cool, because I was like super nervous at first. I was like, man, I don't even know how to act. I'm like, what the hell? Like where we gonna sit in? I was thinking about like planning it out. I was gonna write down like points that I was gonna hit. Okay, I need to talk about this. And I'm just like, whatever, dude.
nah,
You know what I mean?
that's not what.
But it's kind of cool because we broke the ice and now I feel more comfortable. It's almost, dude, listen, it's just like having a normal conversation with somebody. Like, like I'm getting all nervous thinking this is like an interview or something.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's
I got
not.
to say
Yeah.
all the right things. I got to say all the right things, and I got to look right. And the light, I mean, the lighting came out good. I'm
Yeah,
using your light.
oh, good. Yeah. But finally, you're fucking using it.
It's the
Um,
first time.
yeah. No, I don't, and that's what I want. Like, I'm not gonna prep people. Like, I have, like I said, I have like about 10 or 11 people now who um submitted a form to be a guest on the show. I'm gonna look through. I've looked through some of them already, and there's some people who I probably won't have on. But like, yeah, if something interests me in that story or what I'm seeing, then I'm gonna have these people on, and I just want to, yeah. My job is to make people feel comfortable to just have a conversation, and then to listen with intent and follow their story and what they're saying, with hopefully pieces of, my questions or comments that adds to whatever their story is, because I don't want it to be about me. I want it to be people sharing their stories, and then, like, if it interests me, then cool, it like will spark some questions and some we'll go down different rabbit holes and shit and whatever the story is. And
Yeah, next time we can talk about conspiracy theories and stuff. That'd be cool.
for sure, bro, we'll
It's not a
or-
conspiracy.
yeah, yeah, our non-conspiracy theories. So I'll cut it off before I'll end the thing at some point before this. But what I did do is I paused the upload for you several times during that, just because on my end, like, you were looking like a fucking blob. Like, it does say that the recording is gonna be fine, but like, I just wanted to see if I did that. So I don't
I
know
know. I
what.
seen pause the one day. I'm like, pause myself because I went like this and you paused it. I
Oh yeah,
snapped and it paused and I'm going, I
yeah.
went
So
and did it again.
I don't know how this works. Like, I just it should be uploading again now. So I don't know if it's just going to continue to upload from your phone until it is done. But
All
like,
right.
I don't know. I don't know what's
All
going to
right.
happen with that. So we'll
All
see.
right. Let's see what happens.
Experiment on it. But yeah, cool, man. Thank you, bro. I love you so much,
Yeah.
and
Let me know what happened.
I will let you know what happens. You let me know if any weird notifications pop up or what
Okay.
happens on your end, just so I know, and then I could let people know in the future, like, hey, your phone is going to continue to upload this thing, so don't turn it off. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. All right. Yeah, I won't turn it off. I'm actually going to plug it in. I'm going to go plug it.
Yeah, go plug it in, and then
All right.
yeah,
Love you, dude.
I'll let you know what's up with this, man.
Okay. Cool.